2020 is a unique time for manufacturers about to embark on a digital transformation journey. Today I'm going to talk about some of the trends in the industry and some of the things you should be aware of as you begin your digital transformation or ERP implementation. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients through their digital transformation journeys. And now is a very unique time for manufacturers. There's a lot of things that when we're thinking about digital transformations and ERP technologies, a lot of things we should be aware of and a lot of things that are different than what we've seen in the past. First is lack of maturity for many of the cloud solutions that are out there. A lot of ERP vendors are moving to the cloud, and that includes a lot of manufacturing ERP vendors who are now moving to the cloud for the first time. So that's creating some gaps and deficiencies in terms of what we as manufacturers need for our enterprise systems deployments. Secondly, there's more systems than ever to choose from. There's a lot of tier 2 and tier 3 systems that 5 or 10 years ago might not have been viable for us as manufacturers, especially if we're mid-size or upper mid-market or large organizations. But today, there's a lot more options and a lot more scalable options than what we've had in the past. And then finally, thirdly, a lot of manufacturing functions are not being addressed by some of the leading ERP vendors, and that's something that we need to be aware of as we move forward with selecting a new software and ultimately deploying those technologies. So here are the 4 tips that you should be aware of and that you need to know going into your digital transformation in the next year. First is that manufacturers have a lot more digital transformation and ERP options than they've ever had in the past. In our top 10 list this year, there were several manufacturing-heavy ERP types of systems like Sage, like Infor, IFS, for example. Those are 3 manufacturing-focused organizations or vendors that landed in our top 10. In addition, there's a number of options that didn't make the list that are still very viable manufacturing ERP options. In fact, when we release our top 10 ERP systems for manufacturers, you'll see some of these vendors in the list. You have systems like Plex, QAD, IQMS, DCOM, Acumatica, just to name a few. They didn't make our top 10 list, but they're very viable for manufacturing organizations. And then you have non-ERP options too. So when we look outside the realm of manufacturing ERP, we also have manufacturing execution systems. We have product lifecycle management. We have robotics. We have Internet of Things, e-commerce, a lot of different technologies to choose from and integrate to our back office ERP system. So what this does, it creates a lot of options, creates a lot of choices, and it's a lot to navigate. So that's good news, but it's also bad news because it can be easy to get caught up in analysis paralysis. And we don't want to be out there chasing and evaluating systems or technologies that aren't a good fit for who we are and what we're trying to accomplish. The second thing is to find the technology gaps in whatever it is you're deploying. And that's the key, is whatever you deploy, there are going to be gaps, and more so now than even in years past for some of the reasons I mentioned earlier. So for example, some of the functional areas that we're seeing manufacturers struggle with right now when they're deploying flagship ERP systems like S/4HANA, Oracle ERP Cloud, or D365, we're seeing them run into trouble with things like manufacturing execution systems and shop floor automation. The connection between what's going on the shop floor and the back office ERP system is in many cases flawed, or there's some gaps there. Product configuration, if you're an engineer to order or a custom make to order type of shop, that product configuration functionality is something that not all systems can handle well. So it's really important to dive into that area and make sure you find a system that can handle that, because it's such a core part of your business if you fall into that category. And then field services is another example. If you have field techs or people out in the field doing some sort of work as part of your manufacturing operations, not all systems can handle that well, and that's usually a big differentiating factor for organizations and manufacturers that are looking to find the best ERP system for their organization and their operations. So the way to address some of these gaps are to, first of all, look at poking holes in any ERP system that you might be considering. Even if you think you're leaning towards one, make sure you identify where those gaps are, and if you haven't found any gaps, chances are you haven't tried hard enough and you haven't found what the real deficiencies are. Every system out there has deficiencies, especially in the manufacturing space. It's also important to consider best of breed options. So rather than sticking to just one ERP system and hoping or assuming it can do everything for everyone within your organization, oftentimes we're seeing more manufacturing clients of ours move toward that best-of-breed model where they have a core ERP system at the core, but they've got other third-party bolt-ons that'll handle areas such as MES or product lifecycle management, Internet of Things, etc. And then finally, a word of advice in this category is to identify companies like yours that have implemented that exact solution. So if you're looking at S/4HANA or Oracle ERP Cloud, for example, make sure that you look at clients that have implemented that exact technology, not one of the old legacy products, because those products are more mature and have better manufacturing capability in many cases, but companies that have implemented the exact technology that you're looking for. That will help you identify the strengths and weaknesses as it relates to your manufacturing operations. The third thing is not to fall for common vendor and system integrator sales tactics. And we see a lot of vendors and system integrators and resellers be very aggressive in the market, not just with manufacturers, but other types of organizations as well. And some of the things we hear vendors and system integrators promote are things like best practices, industry best practices. For example, SAP has a manufacturing company model that they'll promote to manufacturers as a way to provide best practices to manufacturing organizations. But that doesn't mean that the competencies and capabilities of the software aren't still lacking for manufacturing operations. So it's important to look past that and really dig in and dive under the hood of the software rather than listening to sales and marketing spin around the capabilities of the software. Another common sales tactic that's highly effective but highly dangerous is that companies will mask some of the manufacturing deficiencies by saying, let's not worry about the manufacturing operations right now, let's focus on the digital core or the core ERP system, which is financials, inventory management, accounting, all that basic stuff that doesn't yet quite touch all the manufacturing operations, all the shop floor type stuff that's going to be really important to your ERP project. And what that does is it takes your attention away from over here, which isn't very well established, back to over here where the digital core is actually well established. And we don't want to make a decision without fully understanding what we're missing over here, because eventually we're going to have to deal with that. So that's another sales tactic that's really important to watch if you're a manufacturer, because we see a lot of our manufacturing clients get that exact sales messaging from vendors and system integrators. And then finally, it's important to understand what strategic options are best for you. If a vendor is sunsetting their old product and they're pressuring you to upgrade to a new system, and let's just assume they're not bluffing and they actually are going to sunset the product in 3 or 5 or 10 years or whatever it is, that's not the end of the world. You still have that software, you still have access to it. May not be pretty, may not be the best thing out there, but it doesn't mean you need to put your operations at risk necessarily right now before making sure you've got your ducks in a row and you've got a clear strategy for the best path forward for you as an organization. Secondly, if you do decide to move forward with the new ERP system, doesn't mean you need to do it right away. There's probably a lot of low-hanging fruit you can get by improving business operations, getting more out of what you've already got, and then slowly easing into a new ERP system. A lot of times ERP vendors and system integrators will push you to adapt as much as you can right now, but it's important to recognize that you're in control of the tempo and you can control the pace at which you adapt or don't adapt to new technologies. And what we end up doing with a lot of clients who hire us to help them select and implement ERP software, sometimes we'll recommend don't implement anything right now. Let's spend a few months getting your operations cleaned up, tightening up your business processes, improving your business processes, and in the process developing a clear blueprint for how we want to deploy new technology when we get to that point. So it's important to recognize that you do have strategic options along that front as well. And then finally, it's important to be deliberate and strategic. Have a clear digital roadmap. That's something I'm happy to help you with. I'm happy to brainstorm or bounce ideas around with you if you are looking for ideas on how we can develop a roadmap that makes the most sense for you and your strategic objectives as an organization. So in closing, I hope you found this information useful. We help a lot of manufacturing organizations through their digital transformations every day. I'd be happy to talk to you about how you might start to take some of those first steps or how you might move forward with your digital transformation. I've included my contact information below, so feel free to reach out if you'd like to schedule some time to chat. I've also included some links to some really great materials below, our 2019 ERP report, as well as our top 10 ERP systems I've included a link to below. I also encourage you to like this video and subscribe to this channel, and hope to work with you all soon. Take care.